Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Ryan, seven-figure seller, and today we are joined by Elizabeth Greene. She is the co-founder of Jungler, a company specializing in Amazon PPC management and strategy. With years of hands-on experience in managing high-volume Amazon advertising accounts, Elizabeth has become a recognized authority in the e-commerce space, particularly in optimizing pay-per-click accounts for maximum ROI. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We are currently in the midst of Q4, the biggest season for most Amazon sellers. What are you doing differently to take advantage of this massive surge in demand?
I wouldn't necessarily say differently because we've pretty much refined our processes over the last 6 years or so, however long we've been doing this. I would say the main theme in Q4 that's different than most other times of the year would be instead of doing a lot of testing, right now the name of the game is capitalizing on the testing that we've already done. Not that you don't want to be maximizing if you see a really good potential somewhere. We're definitely still launching campaigns. The costs oftentimes rise during this time. Costs in terms of cost per clicks, also more clicks happening on the platform. And so the cost of testing can be just greater. And so that is something that we typically caution brands with. I think you have some other questions that we'll get into, like maybe stair stepping or how to lead to the next logical test. But I would say really what we're looking to do is what insights have we gained through the rest of the year to identify where those conversion rates happen, where those searches typically happen, what insights, if we've been managing the brand or we have the data on, say, last Q4, where are those traffic searches hitting? You can also look at things like Helium 10 or other tools that will actually have search volume over time, which actually has been really great. You got to check it manually. So pick your battles. But one thing that we found very helpful is for major products to really do a significant deep dive to identify where is that traffic surge hit? Is it on one particular search? Is it across the board? Are there ways in which we can identify where consumer behavior shifted and how do we make sure that ads are positioned to capture that?
Thank you. Helpful. I know you mentioned testing, and that's kind of something that I've always struggled with is where do I get started for a new product and what are the most important levers to start with? How do you approach starting the client with who doesn't actually have that much data in their account to make those decisions?
Yes, this is something that I've been puzzling over because I know that my team is really great at doing these things. And yet, when it comes to sellers managing their own ads or maybe trying to gain insights into where they can maximize their advertising strategy, building off of data or data driven decisions is like this really, everyone's like, I know I need that, but like, what's the actual, like, how does one do that? So hopefully I can give some practical applications of this. But really, at the core of it, when you're starting out, where does one even start? It's identifying where do your products fit in the market and where is that consumer search behavior happening. And I get this question all the time from sellers. I'm like, oh, well, I've done like really intense SEO keyword research. And, as I'm doing product launches, I've kind of identified the main keywords. Can I just take that and just throw it in my advertising campaigns and call it good? I would say you can if you're okay with really high ad budgets and potentially more ad ways. Because while SEO and Amazon advertising research are definitely going to have a lot of overlap. So I'm not saying you can't leverage that research, but you're paying for every single one of those keywords that you're advertising on. You can stick something in the back end of your SEO. And other than the fact that you might have to take another keyword to put that one in, it's not like costing you anything, right? Where it is going to cost you to test it in advertising. And so what we're really looking to do is where can we, obviously without data, but just from a thorough understanding of the product and of the product search market, where does our product most likely going to have shoppers looking for it? And this is super simple to do, to be honest. It's a manual search, but it's going, okay, so I think this keyword makes sense for my product. Go to Amazon, type it in the search bar, what shows up? Sales velocity. Tons of other factors that go into it, right? Relevancy and things. But in a lot of ways, it's like, who is selling the most through that keyword? Amazon's algorithm will tend to favor them. Well, if the algorithm's favoring them because there's a lot of purchases happening to those products, you can infer that the highest ranked products are the types of products that shoppers are purchasing when they are searching for that keyword. So if you, oftentimes when you're doing keyword research, you'll think, oh yeah, that this makes sense for my product. And then you'll go search it and you're like, oh, wait, no, this is a completely different search page than I thought would appear. So you can actually go ahead and validate it. And I'm not saying validate every single keyword. That's obviously overkill. But what we would like to do is say, okay, very classic example would be to taking, probably somewhere around 10-ish competitors who are very much like yours. Example would be like, if you have a baby product and you find competitors, but there's like obvious ones that are more geared towards girls and then boys, you would, if your product's more geared towards girls, then you would pick the girl ones. More relevancy in like terms of what kind of keywords are going to come back. But providing you have that, you do the reversation search. And then what I love to do is sort by search volume and then just say, okay, let me just go down this list, right? The top keywords are probably not going to be relevant at all. Probably something like baby. And you're like, okay, you can look at that search range. It's so varied. Like people are searching for all kinds of things, right? So what I just want to know is like, where is that intersection where I start to get really specific to my product and yet I have good search volume? Because the thing with Amazon advertising is there is no way for you to create demand with Amazon PPC. What you're doing with Amazon PPC is you're simply harnessing the existing consumer demand on the platform. And you are saying, this is where consumers are searching for my products. Let me take an ad. Let me slap my product in front of their face and be like, hey, you want this one, right? That's what we're doing. So what we're trying to figure out is, okay, so where can we sort of curate that list based on where we know the consumers are most likely looking for products like ours, and then also curating that list based on like how expensive it's going to be to run those ads. And then providing you get those things pretty close, you can work off of that to like expand the ads.
Helpful. Thanks. And I like that you talked about kind of rankings and SEO. I know some of my other seller friends who have used Amazon ads agencies before, they felt that the agency was too strictly focused on just advertising metrics and that they didn't look at the organic placements at all. Is that something that you guys are trying to look at to help drive both areas?
Yes, you have to. So in the beginning, like you were saying, you got started like years ago. I'm sure you know, like cost per clicks are super cheap, right? So you could afford to run a very profitable ad strategy. And because it wasn't that expensive, you still would end up with that organic market share because you were naturally being more aggressive with the ads because they weren't as competitive. Well, nowadays, there's sort of this tension that a lot of sellers feel between what they can afford from a profitability standpoint and then what the market demand is. I get this question all the time, like with bid optimizations or what's the best bid optimization? I'm like, I can give you the math. It's like, this is your conversion rate. This is your target A cost. This is what your average selling price is. This is the cost per clicks you need to have to reach X. It's just mathematics. The problem is what happens when you do that calculation. You're like, oh, fantastic. Now I know that I need a 25-cent cost per click. So you know what? Let me just set all my bids to 25 cents and call it good. Well, what happens when your market is paying $1? Your 25-cent bid gets you no impressions. So there's like this tension in between, again, what the market is demanding and what can I afford. And unfortunately, the questions that I get all the time from sellers, and they're not bad questions. It's, hey, how do I rank on X keyword? I'm like, hey, I will give you the formula right now. Take this to the bank. You take your campaign, ideally with the exact match and with that specific product, and you take that keyword and you put it in that campaign and you jack up your bids high enough to show top of search and you make sure you jack up your budgets enough to have that campaign run all day. Congratulations, there's your ranking strategy. So most of the time the questions are, what they're asking is, how do I rank on this keyword? What they're really asking is, how do I rank on this keyword profitably? Which is a much harder equation. There are more advanced strategies you can use. You can leverage budgets and maybe there's some placement percentages, but you're always going to be fighting this tension between what happens when I can afford $1 CPC, but that top of search placement is $3. You can't, as much as it's painful to say, if your competitors are willing to pay $3, Amazon's not going to give it to you for $1. They're just not. It's a function of the market. It's not a function of you doing anything wrong or, trying to beat it. So what we've discovered is that the sellers that are still so hyper-focused on Amazon advertising in isolation, because, again, what we've talked about is to run those profitable strategies. Really the main lever that you can pull in advertising and the biggest lever you can pull is, what is your bid? What keywords am I choosing to run on and what is my bid for those keywords? Those two things as much as there are so many advanced tactics and analytics and things, the crux on if your ads are being run well is definitely funny thing. I'm consulting with a brand, right? Spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And we're like, all right, so let's go with like, what are the advanced strategies? What are the things? And I'm taking a look at the ads and I'm like, guys, your bidding strategy is just misaligned. Like there's so many misses I'm seeing that like, if you just got this one thing right, you would actually exponentially increase your brand. So like the fundamentals have to be there. And so if the bidding is important, and if all you're focused in on is advertising optimizations, and you're not taking a look at what is the impact of this on my market share growth, then you will continuously optimize down to the point of completely obliterating all of your ranks and your market share. And you're going to wake up a year from now, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, and go, oh crap, why are my competitors outpacing me? Oh, it's because they have market share on all of these main terms. Where is my market share? Oh, I've been leaving that part out of the equation of how I'm running my ad strategy. And so therefore I'm getting less behind. But it's not that we ever want to say, all right, let's just like jack up all the bids. Let's get aggressive. Let's go crazy, right? That's not a way to run a strategy because, you're an Amazon seller. You focus on books and you focus on profitability. If that's all you did, you're not going to have cash flow. You're not going to have money, to reinvest in inventory. So bottom line definitely needs to be taken into account. But we find if all your focus is on today's bottom line, you miss long-term strategy. If all you're focusing on is like long-term and eventually we'll get there and then we'll worry about profitability, and you at least don't keep that in the back of your mind, then you're going to hit that day where you're like, oh shoot, I don't have enough profits to continue. So it's just constantly understanding how to balance both of those things.
I remember back 2017, my first product, launched it with a $10 a day auto campaign. And I think it was generating $50 to $100 a day. Whereas today, it's like you said, and the key is profitably. That it's not rocket science. If you want to capture a market, you can just pump $10,000 in, you could get a random product up there. But that's not the question the sellers want to know. With times changing, getting more complex, 2025, what are you actually seeing? What on the tactical side, what does that look like for a 6-7 figure brand, number of products on a weekly basis to actually manage these campaigns? And is this even something that's worth a company's focus, or should they be trying to find maybe like an agency or someone who has that specific domain expertise?
I would say if you have anyone manage your ads, given how the added complexities that are happening and also giving the additional just like competitiveness, especially in the US markets, it is within your best interest, if you want to sustain yourself long term, to have somebody in your corner who, one, fully owns and fully understands what it takes to run Amazon advertising. Now, with that being said, you could be using an agency like ours. You could have an in-house person. Where we found that there's been a constant struggle is oftentimes like the brand owner may have at one point set up systems 2 years ago and say like, well, I have a team that's just kind of running them. And like the team's doing what they know to do, but there's no one like driving innovation in that sector. And so eventually, kind of things degrade over time. You realize that performance just wasn't what it was. Or the other factor might be like you have an agency who there's layers to this. So there's like the fundamental layer, which is picking good keywords, making sure the bids are right, make sure your spend is in line with what goals you have at the product. I would say that's the good fundamentals, which is like, continuously doing keyword research, continuously launching campaigns to reinvigorate things. Like you have like your basics that are running. It means how do we use data to identify what is working? What is quote working is typically driving sales and then driving profitable sales, or at least driving sales and it's driving increases in market share. What is working? How do we do more of that? And that's why I think a clear like campaign checklist or roadmap, while they are helpful, if you're like, just give me something to do, I can't even make headway. There's so many potential things I could be launching and it just seems overwhelming. A data-driven approach will say, okay, what's working? Well, I take a look at the account and all of a sudden I see all of these baby girl specific keywords are popping up. Oh, it's very obvious that the baby girl product and these specific keywords are working. Fantastic. What else can I do to further capitalize on that data? And this is where the creativity comes in of a good account manager. So that would be other competitors. Can we do product targeting on this kind of thing? No, we're not. oh, wait, I see this other long tail variation of newborn baby girl. Oh, we have a size that fits that category. Okay, can we capitalize on that further? Are we running video ads on those keywords? No, we're not. Let's see if we can capture more market share. So it's like building off of the things that are working versus someone else might have a product and we're like, wow, product targeting is crushing it for us. Maybe we're struggling a little bit in the keywords. Product targeting is good. Okay. There's this one product that we're crushing it on. How can we capitalize on that? Oh, well, I know that there's expanded product targeting, which means the algorithm's going to go and find more products that are similar to the one we're at. Let's try that. We can leverage sponsor display ads to also show up on those product pages. Let's capitalize on that. Are there branded terms for the specific product that we obviously are competitive? So you can see how it's like building off of what is already known. And then on the flip side, it's also what is not working. How do we decrease that? So that would be, oh, we noticed like this specific phrase for us doesn't perform well. So let's, maybe decrease bits on that. Or maybe product targeting isn't working so great. So maybe we need to do, or there's all these terms that keep popping up. Maybe we should leverage that. Those is negative. So that's, so you could see how you start going in the direction that makes sense for the product. Which unfortunately means like, I can't like hand someone, here's these 5 campaigns to run and here's the 2 checklists. And like, again, that's helpful in the beginning, but it's not as helpful. And I would say a third layer dimension on top of that would be category nuances. You have your basics, you have the ability to expand based on data, and then you have an understanding of the category. So an example of that would be, let's say clothing. So we work a lot with variation specific products, like large catalogs, immense amount of analytics and things. Like how does one even make sense of that? You're dealing with like 50,000 SKUs and hundreds of listings. How does one deal with that, right? And so there's very specific like variation strategies. There's interactions. There's even a way profitability, if we factor in advertising on a SKU level, can lead you to incorrect advertising understanding and incorrect ad optimizations. I'm not saying don't look at SKU-based profitability. I'm saying you need to be careful when you're making advertising-based decisions on a very small subset of what your catalog is and the interactions between that. You need to know those nuances. Let's say in the home goods category, right? Or there's very specific nuances to that and maybe certain terms you would go after. So there is some nuances to say stylized category, meaning if we have, I'm trying to think of something, say it's like basket or something for home goods. An interesting factor here is that in these categories where people get really specific over the different styles that they're looking at, sometimes ranking on something like basket all the way down on page 3 is actually, you can still gain some market share there because people search so deep into the catalog versus other categories. Like if you're not on page 1, you're not seen or found at all. Nobody's purchasing. Or things like high priced items with lower conversion rates. There's specific nuances to how you need to adjust ads for that. Because one day a cost is 100%, the next day it's 2%, the next day it's 5%, the next day it's 30%. And you're like, if I optimize for the 100, I'm going to miss out on the 5. And I optimize for the 5, I'm going to have the next day be 200, right? So there's certain ways you need to like aggregate the data and time frames that you need to look at. So we find if you can have all of those layers, that's where you get an ad strategy that's more customized to like what your category, how your products perform, all of that, which again, you have an in-house person or somebody who doesn't have access to a team like ours or has a team with the breadth of experience like ours, that can be, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying it's more difficult. The balance there, of course, is sometimes it's a little bit more costly. So in the beginning, when you're just starting out, is it helpful to have somebody with that level of experience in your corner? Absolutely. Will it be helpful to your launch? 100%. But just depending on where the business is, it may not make sense to pay for that level of expertise. So you just kind of have to find the balance and what makes sense for you.
You mentioned some of your clients with massive SKU counts, and that's something that we've worked with as well. One of the reasons that I was so eager to create my own software startup is to kind of capture this massive amount of data. I'm curious, are there any kind of data metrics that you see other people trying to look into that are actually wastes of time, kind of pitfalls? I feel like there's certain metrics that people can really go down the rabbit hole that I just don't think have a real ROI or sellers versus, like you said, identifying the basic math, clicks, cost, and velocity.
Yeah. I think at some level, digging down into the weeds is necessary because that's where you really find those interesting insights. But as you've said, like just the sheer volume, you can't start in the weeds. You'll never get out of there. You're going to spend all day, every day there. And so we kind of started working with this level of complexity probably about 5 years ago, which in the beginning it's quite daunting. And since then, we have really sort of refined, well, how does one get to those very like boots on the ground incremental understandings that lead us to really understand what's going on? Because the problem is when you look at high level, you can say, all right, so this is happening. Fantastic. I know what's happening. I don't know why it's happening, and I don't know what the heck to do about it. So I can't fix it. So to fix something, you need to know the why and the what next, but you need to know where the trends are going. And so we have sort of like broadened our scope, and you can either look at this on a product level or you can look at this on an account level. We do both depending on what we're trying to troubleshoot. And so over the years, we've puzzled through things like, okay, so sales are going down. What do we do about it? Okay. My first question was, I need to get to a specific level of the account that I can actually make an actual inquiry into. So that for us would be like listing level. Sales are going down. On which parent ASIN have sales decreased the most? Where's that decrease coming? Okay, so it's on this specific product. Great. That's more deep dive for me. So you can see I immediately go from like one, like zoomed in. So, okay, what are the factors of sale? Well, the factors of sales are traffic to the listing, conversion rate on that traffic, and how much money do we make when someone converts? Average order value. So that I can look at over time and say, okay, sales have gone down because seeing sales have gone down. What do I look at? Do I go immediately look at reviews? Do I go look at my rankings? Do I go look at my ad structure? I still don't have a defined thing where I can say, all right, this is the problem. Do you use data again to narrow in more? And then I say, okay, is it a function of the conversion rate has gone down, or is it a function of the traffic, or like, do we increase price or decrease price or something along those lines? Oh, it's a function of the traffic. Okay, that's interesting. What goes into traffic? Rankings, ad strategy. Those would be the main ones, kind of where you troubleshoot BSR. Is it a category thing? You can go look at category. How's traffic in my category decrease? I can go look at, maybe the traffic over time to like my main keywords. All of a sudden you'll start zooming in to the actual problem. Or if it's a conversion rate issue, say, oh, okay, so what are the factors of the conversion rate? You will want to look at the competition. Oh, we found this before. It's like, wow, the main competitor, because they're playing with their pricing to get number one BSR, all of a sudden they drop their price $10. We can't compete at that. Like, that's why everybody's like category is going down, because, oh, but we found that because we're like, oh, sales drop. Why did sales drop? Conversion rate drops. What are the factors of conversion rate drops? Well, we haven't really done anything different with our advertising. It's not like we've started advertising on keywords like these used to work. Why didn't they convert? Oh, there's a competitor there. Then maybe it's something to keep an eye on. Right. So this sort of like big picture down to small, minute details is where we've found the most value in just like troubleshooting those things.
Moving on, I know you offer a lot of sellers kind of a free audit. I'm curious if you can share any kind of examples of commonalities or quick fixes you observe with these sellers that if they just tweak this little thing or lose the top of search percent, or what are kind of your common findings with these new seller accounts?
Yeah, oftentimes I see it's a misalignment in where the ad spend is going and what is going to lead to better and greater market share. Or it's really looking at the ad spend allocation on the advertising structure for a specific product is where we find the most actionable insights. How you actually figure out what products you need to focus in on, because again, sheer volume of products. What do you go look at the ad structure for every single one of them? You could, we do eventually, but right, you need to get the biggest action items first. And so what we find very helpful is we will create a view on aggregating account data and then ad data. And we will aggregate this on a parent ASIN level, again, because SKU level, it leads to nuances. Again, forest for the trees. You just want to look at parent, which is essentially a listing level. So you will look at the total sales per list that you import parent ASIN/listing, and you look at the total ad spend per parent ASIN/listing. And then here's the thing that's been very helpful for us is because oftentimes you're like, okay, I know this is my bestseller and I know that this is the one where my ad budget's going. I already know this, right? But my question is by how much? If you want to answer them by how much question really quickly, you do percentages of total. So that immediately gives you clarity because you say, oh, wait, this product's driving 40% of my sales, allocating about 12% of my ad budgets here. Okay, maybe there's some misalignment there. Or I've seen it all the time. It's like this product's driving like 1% of our ads, like our total sales, and yet you're allocating like 10% of the ad budgets. No, sometimes, of course, a nuance like that would be, oh, this product's in a ranking phase and that's intentional. That's fine. At least I want to be aware of it. But what I find out all the time is like, most often when you see those allocations, it's like they've thrown all the products in one giant campaign and there's like no way to control allocations and the algorithm's just doing what it's going to do. No idea that was happening. So first I want to just know like, what are the ratios? Where is it going? And then the second thing I want to know is what are the performance of it? So performance is going to be ACoS, total ACoS, what we call ad sale percentage, which is like what percentage of the total sales are being attributed to ads. So it's ad sales divided by total sales. And then the other thing we like to look at is unit session percentage versus ad conversion rate. So these for us are markers. Ad conversion rate versus unit session percentage is a marker. Ad sale percentage is a marker. So an example would be what we have found is that if you're being very specific and intentional with your targeting, typically speaking, your ad conversion rate will be greater than your unit session percentage. Not always. Again, if ACoS is great, if total ACoS is great, if we're happy with the sales and, there's this discrepancy, I'm like, well, don't burn down something that's working, right? It's a marker. But if we're struggling and we're like, why can we not advance? Why are we not gaining market share? It's like, well, maybe your conversion rates you're targeting with your ads is not competitive enough in the market. You don't have high enough conversion rates to make that make sense. Or like ad sale percentage, right? Which by the way, benchmarks these days are typically about 50% of total sales are coming from ad, which is really scary for large brands. Like I consult with brands all the time. They're like, I know this needs to improve, but I'm doing like $20 million on the platform. I got to hand an ad manager 50% of my total sales volume business and like very high ad budgets and trust you to manage this well. So it's a very big leap a lot of times for sellers to hand over that much of their business and I have to trust somebody. So I completely sympathize there and like the struggles with that. See, you're zooming out into the big picture and you're saying, where is there discrepancies? Where have I over allocated ad budgets? Where have I under allocated ad budgets? Okay, so this is where the majority of my budget is going. What's the ACoS on that? What's the total ACoS on that? Is there needs to be improvement here? And immediately, if you know what you're doing with this kind of view, you will go in and say, oh, well, there's this product, this product, this product. Everything else, yes, I need to look at, but these are the big problems. So then you dive down and see ads on those specific problems instead of going, okay, my entire ad account, where do I even look? Poking around, tweaking a couple things, not knowing if you actually tweak the right things, not seeing the ad performance improve, rinse and repeat, trying to figure it out.
I'm curious, most tools right now, they're just algorithmic kind of bid adjustments. What are you guys using for tools to help you out? And do you have any kind of predictions for the future? Do you think any tools eventually will be able to actually conduct those deeper analyses for you? Or is that still something that's always going to require a human?
I think for the deeper analysis, yes. I think that's where AI is best leveraged. And we're working on several internal projects right now that I'm really excited about for, just leveraging and surfacing things that I think need to be surfaced. Because sort of that process that I was walking you through was, hey, this is what we need to look at, or this is where we want to look at, or how do I scrape this? Those things are in a lot of ways algorithmic. And so I think that's where systems like that can be really well leveraged. I have some amazing friends who are working in the space, who work on softwares that do have an AI component to them. And I think they are brilliant. And I'm really excited for the future. However, in everything I have seen, and the robots aren't taking over yet. And I don't think they're going to take over as soon as everybody thinks they're going to take over. And the reason why is because ad strategy really needs to be dictated and adjusted based on the individual brand goals. And while analytics and understanding the depths and nuances of maybe what's going on in the account is definitely something that AI or really an algorithm can be very beneficial in helping you with. So what we have is for a lot of our ad management, we have internal systems that we've built and perfected, since inception. And we've since hired the programmers and we're going to take advantage of AMC and all of those new things. So I think there's a lot of interesting things with data analysis. That is really where I mean, that's what you guys are building, right? You're like, hey, putting this together in spreadsheets, totally possible, not worth my time, right? Give it to me in a dashboard. But where I think AI or honestly any algorithmic platform is going to fall short is in the what do I do about this? Not because they can't make intelligent decisions, because they don't have the flexibility to grasp the nuances of what is required for the brand. So, an example would be say there is a brand going back to that thing I was just telling you about, like and the top competitors drop their price by like $10, right? Our ACoS shot through the roof because our conversion rates were down. It's just the nature and it's mathematics, right? Well, what do we do about it? We actually have two crossroads. So, first crossroad is that we decide to decrease what we're doing in the advertising so we can conserve on profitability. And we will hopefully wait because you can't sustain a $10 decrease in your, in your cost for that long. So what they're doing is kind of pulsing it over like a week span, and then we kind of wait till their BSR maybe has a hit, and I would do it again. Well, we have two options. Either we pull back for that week and try and push to regain whatever market share may have been lost, or we identify, well, this is the cost of playing this market and maintaining the market share that we have. So we're going to continue the advertising, recognizing that the metrics are not going to be fantastic, but we know that it's just for this week. We've accepted that we're going to have a loss on XYZ amount of ad budgets, right? Neither of those strategies are wrong. It's what fits within the brand. So the brand that is strapped for cash flow might say, you know what, I really need to pull back on these advertising costs because I can't sustain this right now. We're coming up with read orders. We have issues. Like, no, let's pull back. Fantastic. Let's do that. The other brand's like, I have struggled to gain the market share that I have. No way anyone's taking that from me. Let's keep going. Let's hold this, right? Again, neither is right or wrong. It's what is best for that brand and that business at that time. And that is the thing that I don't know if AI will ever fully solve. There's very interesting language models and there's reasoning and things that, to be honest, I think eventually the robots will take over and we hope they are benevolent masters. But up until that point happens, you will always need some level of a skilled practitioner who can ask the why question several times, translate what you are communicating as a brand and your needs into what ad strategy best fits that. And again, I don't see any software, any fully automated system just having that level of ability yet.
Yeah. They kind of, for us, we are trying to have our AI or algorithms kind of essentially comb through these vast amounts of data, point out issues to start a human inquiry and just kind of give a faster starting point. So, well, this was a great chat, Elizabeth. I really appreciate your time. For people who want to learn more about you and what you guys offer, where can they find you?
Yeah, so absolutely. The best place is going to be our website. So jungler.com, jungler.com. That's where you can reach out, ask for a free audit. If you're struggling with something on your ads, you're like, oh, what does the nuanced strategy look like in my category? More than happy to compile that and point that out for you. So that would be where you would reach out, get on a call with us. We'll talk what it is that you need from your brand first, then we'll move on to the audit. The best place to follow me is definitely going to be on LinkedIn.